Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for a mock draft. Insert day of the week that this gets released. I'm probably not going to drop them on Mondays. Mock Draft Monday has beautiful alliteration, but so many people do it because of that, and I think we need something to chew on the in-between days of the week, so I'll probably be releasing this on a slightly different schedule than, for instance, last season, but not a big deal, right? We'll be able to survive, but some of you, I'm not sure that you survive when you don't like the pick that I make for your team. Look, these are scenarios. If you want to see the consensus board, you can go to see the consensus board on the NFL mock consensus board.com. That's not the website's name. It's something like that. If you actually want the website, you're not familiar with it, let me know. I can get you that information in the comments very easily. But the thing is we're trying to explore different avenues. Not no matter how likely, we still want there to be some semblance of possibility of these things happening, and at the end of the day, we know that basically almost anything is possible when it comes to the draft. We have a decent idea of what will happen, but there will be surprises, and every little thing that changes the rest of the mock draft, and that's what we're trying to explore with these. So, with that in mind, we are going to start by doing something that may happen, may not happen. But coming into this mock draft, I'm kind of thinking of the quarterback situation around the league. And for the most part, there's enough quarterbacks to fill team needs. You can sell yourself in an attempt to sell fan bases on any of these names to some extent for the short term, and in some cases for potentially for the long term. So teams that have quarterback needs, probably at least, are Tennessee Titans, Cleveland Browns, New York Giants, Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Jets. Technically, they have Aaron Rodgers right now. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings, who technically do have their plan A, and we'll see what else they do. But that leaves a lot of available options here. Aaron Rodgers, if he decides to continue to play football, would be one of them. And then there's 6 other names: Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins. Once again, I'm not saying they're all amazing, but if you need a bridge quarterback or something, you can at least get that out of those names for the short time, see what you got with it, and that's 7 names, 7 teams. So with that in mind, I am going to have the Tennessee Titans having figured this out in free agency. As a reminder, if a guy is a free agent, I do not consider them to be on your team because they're not under contract. So unless I will make clear if a pick is dependent upon a big-name free agent that we do or do not think will sign with a team, I'll make it clear what the scenario is in those situations. But generally speaking, just assume everybody that's a free agent is not on your roster in terms of how I'm viewing your rosters. I don't believe that the New York Giants will have to spend an arm and a leg to move up here. I don't think the premium will be as much as it is some years in drafts. Unless they're fighting against somebody for like Abdul Carter here, maybe the Tennessee Titans, maybe they don't want to give this up because they're afraid that somebody could jump to Cleveland's spot for Abdul Carter if they move even just a couple of spots. But I have to think that they would be open to the option of either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. They have both of those needs as high up of needs as possible. So you drop 2 spots, you're going to get one of your main names. So we will offer this trade. We'll just go with a future first if we can here to New York instead of giving them some capital for this season. And that is accepted, New York Giants. This could go either way. But I do have just a gut feeling in the heart of hearts type of feeling that Shedeur Sanders is going to end up being a New York Giant. There are some reasons feet on the ground have said that it feels like that might be the case, but this has been a feeling that I've had for some time now, and it really comes to even prior to some extent, him having, or I should say, it's not reliant on the fact that he had the New York Giants, on his shoes that he was going to wear in, the final game of the season in the bowl game. And then he doesn't end up wearing them because the New York Giants lose the first round, pick there. I think he was just taking the team that had the first pick and putting them on his shoes there. But I do think that between what sway the camp of Shedeur Sanders might have on where he goes, I think that they're probably not going to be happy with the Tennessee Titans or the Cleveland Browns drafting him. I think they want to be in a bigger market, so the New York Giants or the Las Vegas Raiders, for instance. And the Giants, we know, are going to be going quarterback. Last year, they attempted to. They didn't make it happen. They made it halfway through this year before they said, we don't even care if the league knows what our intentions are. We're going quarterback this upcoming draft. So that's where, I think Shedeur Sanders comes in play, is the leashes here for GM Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll. They're on short leashes, so when you take Cam Ward, this is a guy who needs more fine-tuning, less of a day one ready-to-go prepackaged product, whereas Shedeur Sanders, he doesn't have the same kind of ceiling, but you should be able to get him out there week one, and he can give you enough to go off of, and you trust your coaching to be able to coach him up more. That's the path here, but he'll give you enough to be able to hold on to your jobs for another season is the hope of taking Shedeur Sanders. So that's the route that we're going to go, but I do really want a quick touch on Cam Ward to New York. Makes a lot of sense. Brian Daboll is highly credited with some of the early success and progression of Josh Allen, a quarterback that no doubt has some similarities, Cam Ward, to Josh Allen, especially when you compare Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. So when it comes to scheme and just previous maybe quarterback preference, I don't know if he had any kind of input in the drafting of Josh Allen, but definitely has some experience with that type of quarterback and success stories. So there is that thought process, which is a very valid thought process as well for Cam Ward to the New York Giants. Either way, we're going to have them jumping up a spot or two in this draft. We're going to do 2 spots here and grabbing Shedeur Sanders. I just think that that's going to happen at the end of the day, one way or another. With that, could be Abdul Carter, could be Travis Hunter here at pick 2. Abdul Carter's the most recent, hot number 1 draft pick, non-quarterback at the very least. I'm still going to go Travis Hunter. I think that is a little bit more of a need. You look at the edge room there in Cleveland, and they're okay. Obviously, Abdul Carter, you would hope, should be able to come in and raise that roof even more, and they could definitely sell themselves on that. I'm going to go Travis Hunter. I think he's a slam-dunk quarterback prospect, can bring them some help in the red zone, I would assume, mostly on offense and as a wide receiver, and so I just really like that addition here. 2 positional groups that Cleveland needs help with anyways, bringing on the Tennessee Titans, and they're happy they get their choice anyways here at pick 3 where they were going to go, so that works out nicely for them, which is going to bring on the New England Patriots. And when I look at my needs list for the New England Patriots, the first 3 are all different offensive line groups: center, guard, tackle. Their offensive line is in shambles. It's absolutely ridiculously terrible. So I am going to give them the number 1 offensive lineman in the draft. Is it reaching? Maybe a little bit, but they're going to get the best offensive lineman they absolutely need to help protect their quarterback for his future success and for his health, of course. So we're going to take Will Campbell off of the board, who I do believe is the best offensive lineman in this draft based on early returns of scouting here. So that's the way that we're going to go for New England. Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock, and they're looking at the board, and they're open. They're listening as the phones might be ringing. And if you look at these teams, even Las Vegas, but especially the Jets, Carolina, New Orleans, all teams that could be looking at edge rusher. Edge 1 off the board, not available. But if we have some sort of preference for edge rusher, I stopped at New Orleans for a reason here, then we might want to jump some of these teams for our preferred next best edge rusher that is still available on the board. So we're going to have Chicago getting a little bit aggressive in this scenario and jumping up. Last year, also a team I had get aggressive in 1 or 2 mock drafts, so I don't know what it is with Chicago. I always like getting aggressive with them. Maybe I just like using up their capital. So I'm a Packers fan, by the way. So this is what we're going to do with Chicago. Really could use some help along the defensive line. When it comes to the actual terms of the trade, don't bother complaining about it. It doesn't matter. The main idea is that the trade was made. But I do look at value trade charts when I make these, just so it's roughly on par. And sometimes I do make up stories where there's going to be, a premium that they're going to have to pay to move up this far to force a team further back or something like that, where then I will go a little bit off value. But for the most part, That's not the part that matters. The part that matters is that Chicago is now on the board and Jacksonville is now pick 10. That's all that matters. It can happen. A trade can happen if two teams want to make it happen one way or the other. That value will be determined between them and only them. So, Chicago comes up. They're on the clock. Like I said, we want an edge rusher. We're going to take our next best edge rusher. I know Mike Green's getting a lot of pub as of late. Flying up boards. He's already pretty darn high up on my board. I like him a lot. There are some things that you cannot just train a guy, like their height. There are some issues with Mike Green. He is not he's not a perfect prospect. He's definitely a very, very exciting and interesting one who I expect to do good at the next level. But there are some concerns about his profile, just like there are some concerns about James Pierce. But I still have James Pierce ahead. I think generally more people will still continue to have James Pierce ahead of Mike Green overall. We'll see. Maybe that will flip over time. I know there seems to be some concern over James Pierce with at least one major analyst. So maybe our tunes will change on James Pierce over time. But for now, I think he's a really, really good edge rusher that the Chicago Bears would be very excited to move up and get and leave these guys high and dry. So that's going to alter our draft a little bit, bringing the Las Vegas Raiders up onto the clock as I feverishly try to remind myself of who I have them drafting. Tedrow McMillan makes a lot of sense for Las Vegas in terms of just making this offense full of, more full of weapons for the passing game for whatever quarterback that we do have. And in this scenario, we did not go Cam Ward there, so obviously some sort of quarterback situation has already been figured out in free agency in this scenario. So we're just going to give that quarterback another weapon, and that's going to bring us along on to the New York Jets. And guess what, folks? We're going to put quarterbacks in New York, both teams in New York. Well, there's also the Buffalo Bills, but you get it. The New York Jets, the New York Giants are both going to be getting themselves a new quarterback, so Cam Ward to the Jets for this new group. They're going to be able to grow with him, and hopefully he'll grow with them for, their sake. So that's going to be the case here. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' situation is no longer with the team. Even if he were with the team, I think that this could still be the pick. Cam Ward to them, if he's available, even with Aaron Rodgers, would make enough sense as well. Give him some time to sit and learn. Nothing wrong with that. That's going to bring us on to the Carolina Panthers, who are going to take advantage of a guy who I would say at this point has kind of slipped here in Mason Graham. Instead of going edge, a lot of times we go edge for them, but they have needs all along the defense. Really, they kind of gutted that defense outside of one or two guys. Besides that, they don't have a whole lot that they're working with, so best player available on the defense is what it's going to be here for Carolina. A couple of edge rushers already off the board. That's where we're going to go. Mason Graham should be a stud. Really, really high floor guy. I like him a lot. I think that he is in that elite territory, towards the bottom of elite. He might never be thought of as the best defensive lineman in the NFL. Might not. But he'll definitely be in the conversation as a top 3-4 kind of guy, I think, for a long time. That's going to bring us on to the New Orleans Saints, who are going to go, I think, offensive or defensive line in this situation. We're going to give them Calvin Banks Jr. You can't complain about that. They need help there. That's going to bring us on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I say you can't complain about that, but I'm sure somebody can complain about that out there. Anyways, Jacksonville Jaguars are going to take a guy who I have personally lower on my board, more like a top 15 than a top 10 guy. But obviously, a lot of people do love Will Johnson as well. Good to hear that out there in the league, there are other people who agree with me, who aren't as high on Will Johnson, who do have concerns about him. But regardless, not everybody's going to have those same concerns either. So, all it takes is one team to believe in you. We're going to have the Jacksonville Jaguars, with how this board fell, believing in Will Johnson, thinking that he's an absolute stud, thinking maybe that even he kind of fell to them here. And that's going to bring us on to the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm going to steal this draft pick from the one and only Trevor Sikkema because, well, we know that I love Jahdae Barron. He's my guy. I do think that okay, so he's not limited. He is versatile. He can play out on the perimeter. He can play up at safety. Mostly, you're going to want him as your slot cornerback, playing in that nickel role up against, the other team's slots, and helping to fit the run, all those things. Because I think that he's absolutely elite in that role. I absolutely love him in that role. Once again, he offers you more flexibility, which is, frosting on the cake there. But I think you need to not let that, cloud your judgment and just say that that is the frosting on the cake. And you look at what Jahdae Barron can do, and if you can put him in that role, if that's available on your team, he could be an absolutely elite stud player for you. I think that's Jahdae Barron, and Trevor Sikkema fitted him with San Francisco in one of his drafts, and I absolutely loved it as much as he loved it himself. He sold me on it. It's a really, really good fit, and then that gives that secondary, makes them a favorite of mine. They're going to have Jair Brown in at safety, along with a different safety whose name is not coming to my mind, and then you've got Renardo Green. Malik Mustafa is the other safety, second-year safety, and then you get Jahdae Barron, and that secondary is starting to become a whole bunch of my guys, and so I'm starting to love it and the potential of where that secondary could go. That's to bring us on to the Dallas Cowboys, who are going to take Ashton Jeanty. You've seen it, you've heard it. It makes a lot of sense. It's kind of the pick that a blind mouse would take for Dallas, Ashton Jeanty, if he's available here. He's a top 3 player in this draft, probably, in terms of just pure talent and being the best when you take any kind of positional value out of the equation. Very, very good running back. So Dallas is going to get a stud there. And that's going to bring us on to the Miami Dolphins at pick 13. And we are going to be having them being open to a trade. They have a couple of options that they're looking at. They're pretty sure that if they fall back not too far in the draft, that one of those options will be available. And so when you are in a situation like that, if you're smart, you say, well, who's looking to come up? So that's the other half of this question. We need a trade partner. They don't always exist. We know that. That's always reported on as, sometimes even if you want to move back in a draft, it really just, there's no way to move back. So what would a team want to jump for? You look at what these teams need. I mean, edge rusher, Mike Green could be somebody that somebody would want to jump up for when you look at the Falcons. And then when you look at Arizona, they could go any which route. You can't really predict what they're going to do. But then you look at Indianapolis, and we highly suspect that Tyler Warren is the pick there. So if you want a tight end, if you want Tyler Warren, that can make a lot of sense. In this case, once again, free agent is T. Higgins. We're going to say he does not re-sign with the Cincinnati Bengals. They don't make that happen. And so they do need some help. Now, they've invested in that wide receiver room over the past few years. How well will that investment pay off? Tough to say at this point, but maybe they're going to give it a chance. And instead, at least, in the first round here, let's get a tight end here who can both help protect our quarterback and give him another weapon. And so that is what Cincinnati's going to do. They're going to trade their 17th pick and I think a future second. Actually, the system will probably not allow it. It'll probably force me to do a future third. We'll find out. For pick 13 here. And let's see if it gets denied. No, so it's going to make me go to a third. I think it would probably take a second, but maybe not. Maybe I'm a little high up on that value cost there. So that brings us now on the clock. I already told you it's going to be Tyler Warren, and I told you part of the why. So that moves us to Indianapolis, who's stunned, just like the Green Bay Packers last year. Twice were stunned with players that teams jumped up ahead of them for, and they were left having to take other picks. Going to happen sometimes. That brings Indianapolis onto the clock, and I think that Mike Green is a really, really great pick here. And I know Indianapolis fan that you got a big name in there, Kwity Paye, opposite of your second-year edge rusher now in Laiatu Latu. Laiatu Latu I really like a lot. To give a little bit of just thinking of the whole room here, Laiatu Latu, a very smart, intelligent, technical type of edge rusher with a really, really high floor. And you bring in that, just this absolute chaos wrecking ball of Mike Green, very undisciplined, very chaotic, will cause chaos along the offense, make things break down just purely because he's somewhere where the offense did not expect anybody to be. And that's Mike Green for you. So you just bring this wild element on one side and this very technical, good element on the other side who's going to probably clean up everything that Mike Green causes chaos with. I really like that pairing in Indianapolis. I think it's a lot of fun alone, much less also making sense. So that is the route that we're going to go here for Indianapolis, which brings the Atlanta Falcons onto the clock next. And Atlanta Falcon fan, hopefully you like this pick more than the last one. I don't know, but I really like Walter Nolan, and it's nice to see Trucker Sycamore is now on board with Walter Nolan as well. And I think he's a top 20, for sure kind of guy. I just really like Walter Nolan a lot and what he can bring you. So Atlanta is going to get a guy who's going to come in, give them a high floor in terms of stopping the run and just being a 3-down player, but also can give you a decent amount of pass rush. He's very, very athletic, and his pass rush is still a little raw, still in development. He can just do it once again, just purely on athletics at the next level. He might be inconsistent to start his career. We'll just say that, but I think that he's definitely got the tools to become one of the best or the best. He has that ceiling of being the best at the position, Walter Nolan. So I really like him to help bring a little bit of pass rush here in the short term, a lot down the road to a unit that could use that, and then just a stalwart along that defensive line there. Going to bring us on to the Arizona Cardinals, and they're going to take a guy who I'm not so high up on, but by all means, the league is going to love this guy. Somebody's going to fall in love with him enough to take him. I don't know how high up in the draft. Here, we're going to have him taking that pick 16. Shamar Stewart going to go to Atlanta. If you're not familiar, Shamar Stewart, a big, massive dude, 6'5", 285, I believe were his measurements. They haven't been updated on here. Still young, still developing. His production profile, not very good. Not a first-round production profile. We'll put it like that. But you look last year at Arizona and their draft pick, Darius, I keep wanting to call him like Eric Alexander. I don't believe that's right. He didn't end up getting to play for them this year. He was very much injured almost the entirety of the year, unfortunately. But another big dude. You talk about a defensive line that's going to intimidate the offensive line, just be bigger and stronger. We know that is a proven strategy that works. Just look at Philadelphia as a team who just wants to be bigger and stronger and faster than you along both offensive and defensive line. That's what we're starting to build here in Arizona when you add Shamar Stewart into what they already started to build last offseason. Brings us on to the Miami Dolphins at pick 17, and their primary target was Armand Membu, and he made it through these other picks. So this works out perfectly fine for Miami in this situation. They also might have been willing to draft Malachi Starks if that didn't work. Kind of felt that one of them would be available. Otherwise, I'm sure there were other options that would have been okay. So our risk pays off here. I mean, Walter Nolan would have been another pick here that we could have gone. So there were options. One of them was going to fall to us. Brings us on to the Seattle Seahawks, who I am going to have Seattle take Benjamin Morrison. This is a guy who I actually have a second-round grade on, but that's because of concern with his injury. If it wasn't for that, in terms of just watching the tape, based on tape purely alone, whatever the people always say on Twitter, but I really, really like Benjamin Morrison. I think he would have been in the conversation as the CB1, at least in some circles, if it wasn't for his injury. His hips do not lie. He's got just very extra fluid hips, and that makes him able to shut down cover basically anybody and everybody. He's a very, very, very talented cornerback, athletic, once again, smooth-hipped guy. And that's, I'm focusing on these hips for a reason, not just because they're hypnotizing. The dude is, he got injured, and the injury was to his hips. Now, we don't know what the injury was. We do know that he had surgery, and furthermore, we know that the most common hip injury for defensive backs is a tear, labral tear. And that can have some long-term impacts too, especially if it had to have surgery on it. You never know, are his hips going to be what they once were? Will he never quite be the same? And when you take away the thing that made the guy special, potentially, well, they're no longer special anymore. So that's the risk. That's why I would be very highly concerned, even if he gets the medical green flag, if I don't see him moving something like I saw him on tape prior to having to draft him. I would be very concerned about that. It's going to bring us on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But that said, you get the medical green flag here and everything. That's what we're going to do in this scenario. Ben Morrison, very much worth taking a chance on here at pick 18, even if you do still have some concerns. But could go even higher if his green flags come through, and teams aren't concerned about that. Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the clock. Chris Godwin, Sterling Shepard as well are free agents. So we're going to fill up that gap with Luther Burden, a very good slot wide receiver. It's that simple. And that brings us on to the Denver Broncos. And we could go wide receiver here. That's what I did in my big mock draft. We're going to go with Colston Loveland. We know that this is a fit for head coach Sean Payton. He's done things with this kind of tight end in the past. He's also like a big slot, so whether you would have grabbed him or Emeka Egbuka, you are filling up the same spot on the field a lot of the time. So it's quite all right. You're doing different things with them, but you get the idea here. If you like Colston Loveland more than Emeka Egbuka, then you take Colston Loveland. If you like Emeka Egbuka more, then you take him in this situation. We're going to have Sean Payton going with the tight end. You know, he's had a lot of stud tight ends come his way in the past, so let's continue that tradition. Bring us on to pick 21 here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're going to take another name where myself, I'm lower on them, don't quite have a first-round grade on Michael Williams, but I know some people do and will, and he'll probably end up going at some point in the first round, if not even higher than this, and so, trying to represent what will happen, trying to take a stab at the possible situation here, we do have to draft Michael Williams to a team, and Pittsburgh, not necessarily the biggest need in the world for them, but looking at the board, I think that this would make a lot of sense. They might have a very, very high grade on Michael Williams, and this could be the route that they go. I think that he would fit in nicely in their along their defensive line here. So there we go. That's the route that they go. Pittsburgh fan, how much do you hate that pick? Let's bring on the Chargers. And it's just going to be one of those picks that we'll see a lot of the time. One of these Michigan guys going to the Los Angeles Chargers. It just kind of works like that the value and the board falls where Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland very often are some of the best players available and at positions of need for the Los Angeles Chargers. So, that's just going to be a connection you're going to be seeing a lot. But Kenneth Grant here, a very, very solid pickup for the Los Angeles Chargers, who are going to want to improve along the trenches as much as anything. Going to bring the Green Bay Packers, and I do think that depending on the board, Green Bay will be very willing to trade back from this position, but in this case, they're looking at the board. I like Trey Amos a lot. Maybe I'm a little too high on him, but I'm a big fan, and maybe they are too, and he doesn't come with all these injury concerns like Benjamin Morrison. I think will probably be incredibly high in Green Bay Packers board, but the question is about those medical red flags, green flags, whatever they may be. How much will that impact their willingness to draft him if he's available here at pick 23? In this scenario, he's not even available anyways. And then Siobhan Revel is also, I think, not going to be going in the first round. So you won't see me taking him too often in the first round. We'll see as we get closer. Maybe news will come out that will change that. But that's bringing the Minnesota Vikings onto the board. Looking at the board here, didn't really need a wide receiver. I think we're safetied out, right? Offensive line, we do need some help, and I think we've got just the guy coming off of a stellar showing. This is about, I think we're at the ceiling of where we take Gray Zabel. I still have a first 2 second round draft grade on him, even with how well he performed. Ranked 26, that feels about right. We're in that territory. We're pretty close, and, I think we need to make sure to, once again, just build a good offensive line for our young quarterback that will be playing sooner than later here. That works out well. Gray Zabel, a stud, and I think Houston probably disappointed to see Gray Zabel go. They're still going to go offensive line in this situation. We can put Josh Connerly. I think we can put him in at guard, get away with that for a year or two before moving him out to tackle. where we need them, but whatever the case, we'll get our best 5 out on the field some way or another. We need to improve either this offensive line or this receiving group, and I just did receiver in the other draft, so we just went that route this time around, but I think they would definitely be open to Gray Zabel here. This might be the territory where we see Gray Zabel go, picks 23 through 25-ish territory. It's going to be the Los Angeles Rams onto the clock here at pick 26. And I look at the board, safety not quite a need as much as a fit for their system in Malachi Starks. They would possibly love that. Yeah, Emeka Egbuka could make some sense, but there are some other positions where maybe we have bigger need. And honestly, I have a different wide receiver in mind. That being, I'll just spoil the secret first of all, that being Jack Besh. Now, originally, when I did this trade, Jack Besh was having I made this before, like, the Senior Bowl game, so he had a good camp, and then he had the Senior Bowl game where he absolutely blows up, and now he's on everybody's radar. Maybe he'll fall back a little ways, whatever the case. What I'm saying is the Los Angeles Rams moved back with the intent of grabbing Jack Besh, but just knowing that they could pick up some capital before doing that. And so that is what we're going to do. We're going to be trading here, and of course you always need that trade partner. Now we look at this board and who stands out. Of course, Malachi Starks. Who did we say was possibly willing and who also gained some extra capital to grab Malachi Starks? The Miami Dolphins. So the Miami Dolphins are looking at this board. They're like, hey, we just acquired this capital. We can use it to get a guy who we think was a top 15 guy maybe on our board and is definitely a need. So this is not going to be cheap. It's going to cost us pick 48, 98, and a future. I'm saying second rounder. The system might not allow that. I might have to move that to third round, but going to cost us a future something to move up here. Let's see if that goes through. Nope. So that's fine. We'll do a third. We're okay with that. And Miami's going to come up here, going to take Malachi Starks once again. Big need, big system fit there as well for them, I believe. So you really like that, and somebody that they were willing to grab a little bit earlier in the draft, 10 picks ago. That's going to bring us on to the Baltimore Ravens. I almost called them the Baltimore Colts. We're going to go with Emeka Egbuka here for the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, we're just going to give a nice, solid, easy target for our wide receiver to help this offense be just a little bit more consistent and a little bit more injury resilient, as Zay Flowers' injury definitely could be the difference of how far Baltimore did or did not make it into the playoffs this year. That's going to bring us on to the Detroit Lions, who I'm going to have them go Matthew Golden. A different route. We're not necessarily don't think this is the most likely route, but I do think an upgrade there to the Lions receiving room is still something that they could benefit from. When I say an upgrade, I mean, something here first, second round, something that really could have an impact on that receiving room, could hopefully prevent Jared Goff from what I have called for a long time now, golfing. He has games where he throws 5 picks. He has games where he's just bad. And a lot of that has to do with his comfort level. And the more weapons, the better the scenario is around him, the less chance we have of those things happening, especially in the big games. So Matthew Golden is going to give us another element here in this offense to just make it that much harder for teams to game plan against us. And I think will give us our last peek of, do we need to start turning the page? Is Goff maybe not the answer? Is he not going to be able to take us to the promised land? Do we come to the same conclusion that the Los Angeles Rams did years ago? We'll see. I like Goff a lot, but he does have those games, and maybe another weapon in here can help prevent that from happening, especially in the big game. That's bringing the Washington Commanders up onto the clock. They probably would have been happy to go with Matthew Golden. I really like that fit, but once again, he's not available for them. But Josh Simmons is, and I think that would be a major win for Washington if they could get a guy the caliber of Josh Simmons this late in the draft. As we know, they're ahead of schedule. They would have liked having a higher draft pick in that sense, but they're happy to be here at pick 29. No doubt about that. It's going to bring the Buffalo Bills up onto the clock. Jack Sawyer here at edge for Buffalo, another guy who fits the mold, makes a lot of sense for them, that I like him for them. So that's what we did there. Tyler Booker is an offensive lineman who is receiving some first-round type of, I don't want to call it buzz, but it seems that the NFL might like Tyler Booker Booker plenty enough to go in the first round, much less at the end of it. And I do think that Philadelphia, after going out and drafting, some positions, maybe ignoring for them their offensive and defensive line as of late, will be coming in strong here. They even have a bit of an immediate need at guard. So we're going to take Tyler Booker here. He fits the Philadelphia bigger, meaner, stronger type of mold, 6'5", 325 there. So that is the route that we're going to go. And then the Kansas City Chiefs are going to end up taking Derek Harmon here. And Derek Harmon, I think, is a great fit for the Kansas City Chiefs as he fits the mold that they already have in town and gives them even more pass rush from the inside there, as well as being a long-term replacement. So I'm a big fan of that. It looks like I'm going to have to put this draft up on the screen manually, so that should already be there for you to check out the entirety of the thing. Let me know what you thought, what you liked, what you disliked. I appreciate it all, especially when you deliver it with kindness. All right, peace out. I will see you guys soon.